The night was thick with silence, but that silence was broken by the unmistakable sound of high heels clicking against the cold, tiled floor. Koi, koi, koi. The footsteps echoed through the dimly lit hallway of the girls' dormitory, sending a chill down the spines of every student who heard it. One by one, the girls froze in fear, their eyes wide with terror as the sound grew louder, closer. Miss Koi Koi was coming. No one had seen her, but everyone knew what would happen when she arrived. The door to the dormitory creaked, and with it, the world outside seemed to vanish into shadow. What would happen next?
Like and subscribe.
In a small town in Africa, there was a prestigious secondary school known as Pink House Girls Academy. The school was famous for its history of excellence, but it was also infamous for one thing: a ghost story that sent chills down the spines of every student, the tale of Miss Koi Koi. Years ago, Miss Koi Koi was a stunningly beautiful and stylish teacher. Her signature was her red heels, and every step she took in the hallways echoed with the distinctive Koi Koi sound. But her beauty masked a darker side. Miss Koi Koi was strict, unforgiving, and infamous for her cruel punishments. Students feared her, not because of her authority, but because of her relentless harshness. One fateful day, Miss Koi Koi slapped a female student so hard that the girl's ear was injured. The incident caused outrage among students and parents alike, forcing the school authorities to dismiss Miss Koi Koi. Humiliated and seething with rage, she left the school in a fury. As she sped away in her car, fate dealt her a cruel hand. She lost control of the vehicle, crashed, and died shortly after she was rushed to the hospital. Witnesses claimed her final words were chilling: "I will come back for you all." It wasn't long after her death that strange events began to occur at Pink House Girls Academy. The once vibrant school hallways turned eerie at night. Students in the dormitories whispered in fear about hearing the unmistakable Koi Koi sound reverberating through the hallways in the dead of night. Some claimed to have caught fleeting glimpses of a woman in red heels, her face hidden in the shadows, but none were brave enough to investigate. The legend of Miss Koi Koi grew stronger with each passing year. Seniors passed the tale down to juniors, and no student dared to wander alone after dark. Pink House Girls Academy remained a place of academic excellence by day, but by night, it became the haunting ground of a ghost whose vengeance had no bounds. It was a chilly Friday night, and the girls in Dormitory B were restless. The topic of Miss Koi Koi came up once again during their bedtime chatter. Neka, the boldest of the group, laughed dismissively. "All these stories about Miss Koi Koi are just nonsense," she said, her voice loud enough to echo off the dorm walls. "Ghosts aren't real." Her confidence sliced through the room like a knife, but the other girls sat frozen, their eyes darting nervously toward the dim hallway. Jane, her roommate, shivered. "You say that, but people have heard her heels at night. They say if you call her name 3 times, she will appear." Bisi, sitting by the window, nodded nervously. "Yes, and if she catches you, you won't live to tell the tale." Neka rolled her eyes. "It's just a silly myth. Watch, I'll prove it to you." Before anyone could stop her, Neka stood in the middle of the dormitory and confidently said, "Miss Koi Koi. Miss Koi Koi. Miss Koi Koi." The room fell silent. The other girls stared at her, their faces pale with fear. For a moment, nothing happened, and Neka smirked. "See? Nothing." The dormitory lights flickered violently, casting eerie, jerking shadows across the walls before plunging the room into an oppressive, suffocating darkness. A chilling gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the windows shut with a bang. "Okay, that was just a coincidence," Neka whispered, but her voice trembled. The girls decided to go to bed, hoping the night would pass without incident. But deep down, they all felt uneasy. At midnight, the dormitory was eerily quiet. Most of the girls were fast asleep, but Neka lay awake, her heart racing. The darkness felt heavier than usual, and the silence was almost deafening. Then she heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound that sent shivers racing down her spine. Koi, koi, koi. The sound was too deliberate, too precise to be a figment of her imagination. Each click of the heels was louder than the last, reverberating down the hallway like the tolling of a death knell. Necker froze. Her breath quickened, and her palms grew sweaty. Summoning all her courage, she got out of bed and tiptoed to the door. She peeped through the keyhole. Through the narrow keyhole, Necker saw her, a tall, shadowy figure cloaked in an unnaturally vibrant red dress. Her red heels gleamed, spotless, as if untouched by the passage of time. But what made Necker's breath catch in her throat were the eyes, piercing, glowing like embers, fixed directly on the keyhole as if she knew Necker was watching. Necker gasped and quickly shut the door. But when she turned around, Miss Koi Koi was standing right behind her. "Did you call my name?" the ghostly figure asked in a chilling voice. Necker tried to scream, but no sound came out. Miss Koi Koi raised her hand, and everything went black. When the morning bell rang, the girls in dormitory B woke up to find Necker's bed empty. At first, they thought she had gone to the bathroom or woken up early, but as the minutes passed, unease crept in. A frantic search ensued, with the girls scouring every corner of the dormitory, calling out her name. She was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream tore through the hallway. A sound so raw and primal it made every hair on their bodies stand on end. Gathering their courage, they rushed out, only to be met with a sight that would haunt them forever. Necker's body was sprawled unnaturally across the cold, tiled floor, as if she had been dropped from a great height. Her once vivid eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, frozen in an expression of unspeakable terror. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and ominous, and clutched in her trembling hands was a single, pristine red heel. The next night, Jane and BC were too scared to sleep. They stayed up, whispering about what had happened. "Do you think she'll come back?" Jane asked, her voice shaking. BC nodded. "We called her name. She won't stop until..." A sudden knock at the door made them both jump. "Who's there?" Jane called out, her voice trembling. There was no answer. Then they heard it again. The sound was louder this time, echoing through the entire dormitory. The door creaked open with agonizing slowness, each movement accompanied by the low groan of ancient hinges. The girls' breaths caught in their throats as Miss Koi Koi stepped into the room. Her heels clicked against the floor, but the sound was no longer rhythmic. It was erratic, almost mocking. Her pale face twisted into a sinister grin, and her eyes scanned the room, hungry for fear. The school administration, now gripped by panic, called for the local priest to cleanse the dormitory. Students were warned to stay together and avoid saying Miss Koi Koi's name. But the fear that had permeated the school could not be contained. That night, Jane, BC, and two others huddled together in the dormitory, their hands clutching rosaries and amulets provided by the priest. "I don't think she'll come," BC whispered, though her voice wavered with doubt. A deafening silence engulfed the dorm. Even the crickets outside seemed to hold their breath. Then it began. Koi, koi, koi. The sound was slow, deliberate, and impossibly close. It didn't come from the hallway this time, but from inside the room. No, it's not possible," Jane stammered, her eyes darting wildly around the room. The others shrank back as the air grew colder, a chill so biting that their breaths became visible. The flickering candlelight dimmed, and in the corner of the room, a shadow began to rise. It stretched unnaturally tall, taking on the shape of a woman in a flowing red dress. Her gleaming heels stepped into the dim light, one by one, the sound like thunder in their ears. "Didn't I warn you?" Miss Koi Koi's voice was low and menacing, dripping with malice. Jane, trembling, tried to hold up her rosary, but it snapped in her trembling hands. "Stay back," she screamed. Miss Koi Koi's laughter filled the room, cold and hollow. "You think those trinkets will save you? I don't forgive. I don't forget." The ghost lunged, her face a terrifying blur of rage and agony. Jane let out a blood-curdling scream as Miss Koi Koi's clawed hand reached for her throat. But before she could strike, the dormitory door burst open. The priest entered, chanting loudly and brandishing a crucifix. Miss Koi Koi recoiled, her form flickering like a flame caught in the wind. "You will not harm these children," the priest roared, his voice echoing with authority. Miss Koi Koi let out a piercing shriek, the sound so unbearable that the students covered their ears. Her form began to waver, her once intimidating presence shrinking as the priest's prayers grew louder and more fervent. Finally, with one last ear-splitting scream, Miss Koi Koi vanished, leaving behind only the faint smell of burning roses and the eerie echo of her heels fading into the distance. For weeks, the school was in chaos. The priest declared the dormitory cleansed, but fear lingered in the hearts of the students. Some refused to return, transferring to other schools. Those who stayed spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously toward dark corners and empty hallways. But the story didn't end there. One night, long after the incident, the new batch of first-year students moved into Dormitory B. They were eager, naive, and unaware of the terror that had once gripped the school. That night, two girls were giggling in their beds, teasing each other about the ridiculous ghost stories the seniors had told them. "Miss Koi Koi. What a silly name," one of them said with a laugh. "I'm not scared of some stupid old legend." Her friends smirked. "I dare you to say her name 3 times. "Fine." She sat up in bed and, without hesitation, chanted, "Miss Koi Koi. Miss Koi Koi. Miss Koi Koi." The room fell silent. The girl laughed nervously, glancing around. "See? Nothing." A loud "Koi, Koi, Koi" echoed through the hallway, sending an icy chill through the room. The laughter died in their throats as the sound grew closer, louder, until it was right outside their door. The last thing they heard was the slow creak of the door opening.
What happens next? Is the priest's prayer strong enough to chase the spirit away from the school completely? Or will she come back to hurt the new students? Watch out for part 2.
Like and subscribe.